Okay, welcome to another episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Dashihan Miller here from Warrior Concepts here in East Central Pennsylvania. We're an hour north of the state capital, Harrisburg, 2.5 hours, give or take, 3 hours traffic-wise, northwest of Philadelphia, 4 hours east of Pittsburgh. Hopefully that geolocated things for you. Anyway, so this is our weekly strategy and tactics class, right? It's a freebie for everybody. So what I mean by that is I'm not going to be talking about technique so much, okay? And I'm certainly not demonstrating anything. So this is the juice behind the techniques, right? Why kata look the way they do, why any technique, right, looks the way it does, logical flow, karmic chains, all those kind of things, right? So what we're taking a look at today is specifically training the mind. What I noticed very, very early on in my training was that most students tend to focus, most instructors tend to focus on the body techniques, those kind of things, as far as like the physical actions and whatnot. So it doesn't matter if we're talking about martial arts or self-defense classes, either way, right? They tend to focus in that direction. And so then there's some attention given to what we might call technique, as in strategy, understanding, fight logic, those kind of things. But often that's left as an implication, like, well, the technique is exactly what it looks like. Well, I freaking hope not, right? And from a ninjutsu perspective, it better not be, because if things that you're doing are exactly what they look like, then you're not fooling anybody, right? And then very, very little attention put on what we might call the spirit. But see, I don't mean like religious stuff or philosophy or whatever. I'm talking about the emotional, like the psycho-emotional parts of us that's where, passion, drive, but it's also where fear and anxiety and those kind of things come from. Okay, so what I've been focusing on here of late, right? And for those of you who already got it, you already know. But we just released my book, Seishin Teki Kyoyo, which is from the Togakure ninjas for that school's 18 levels of training. It's the very first level of training. And so to not add everything that could be added in there or whatever, what I did was I focused on 11 core aspects for this whole personal development or spiritual refinement, Seishin Teki, that the Togakure ninja tended to focus on. And so this week, what we're taking a look at, starting with Monday, this Monday's Kuden podcast episode, I focused on three of them, right? Three of them from this perspective of obviously combat survival and whatnot, right? But the focus was on how Seishin Teki Kyoyo, right? Kyoyo tends to mean teachings or approach or study areas, that kind of thing, right? Forms the missing internal structure, right? Behind effective real world survival. Okay, samurai fought, right? We understand battles. Everybody has dreams and fantasies and delusions of living back in the day and whatnot, right? But what was their job really, other than to fight battles and whatnot? What was their job? Okay, it was to maintain peace, order, enforce the rules of the region or the regent, right? The daimyo, whatever was going on in the area. Their job was, well, the name tells you what their job was, right? Samurai is the noun form of the word samurai, which means to serve. Okay, they were servants. Right? So their job was to serve the will of whoever their lord was. Right? On the ninja side, yeah, they worked with that stuff too. But there's this whole inner structure. Okay? And I know people are going to want to point out the samurai virtues and things. That's covered a little bit in the book. It's covered more in this kind of add-on program that I have for it, because not everybody wants to know it. But Seishin Teki, spiritual refinement, has to do with partly developing skills that allow you to operate at a higher level. And then there are skill sets that just increase your ability to survive in really bad situations, right? To give you that edge when the odds are against you. Anybody stands a really, really good chance when it's a fair freaking fight, right? When we're talking about self-protection, or you're just not the favored class, right? You need something different. And then it just keeps going from there, okay? So, but what we're really aiming at here is that in the martial arts world, in the self-defense world, right, most people train physically, but lack what we might call mental preparation, right? And this in and of itself leaves them, they leave themselves vulnerable, okay? Takama Sensei, my teacher, Hatsumi Sensei's teacher, 33rd Grandmaster of the Togakude School, one of the quotes I have from him is that the body follows the mind, right? If the mind is weak, the body will crumble, right? Hatsumi Sensei has also said that a person strong in technique but weak in mind, right, is fragile in real battles, right? People talk tough, whatever, right, carry themselves a certain way, but as soon as the shit really happens, you watch them fold faster than a bad piece of Japanese origami, okay? So we have to be careful, right? We have to make sure that if we're going to be warriors, that we can actually walk the talk. And I don't mean just every day. I mean when we are under extreme pressure, and the consequences of fucking things up in that moment that's a check that most people don't want cashed. Okay, so I was having a conversation with a friend on Facebook. I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before. Just a whole bunch of cultural shit going on and whatnot, and we were talking about how things in certain realms, right? Again, this is me speaking as an old man, and him too, right? 30 years ago, we would have never imagined half of this shit going on. People telling other people, fuck off, whatever. People not being willing to justify their job, and all kinds of things, right? And so regardless of what you think on either side, it doesn't matter, right? As a warrior, we draw a line in the sand. This is what I'm willing to stand for, okay? So, and I'm okay with everybody else not liking that, okay? So, and that's part of the point, right? But what we were discussing was how the difference between somebody getting angry at someone because that person's not fulfilling their responsibilities, their job, they're wasting shit, they don't care, right? They're using other people for selfish gain, those kind of things, right? But then that person gets mad at this person, like in retaliation. But what's the reason that they're mad? Well, because this person was holding them accountable, and this person was telling them the truth, and this person was not just agreeing with whatever they wanted to be agreed with. That's kind of like a kid, right? That's getting an allowance for doing little to nothing weekly, and then the parents decide, look, if you're not going to pull your weight, you're getting cut off. And then the kid runs around and tells everyone who will listen how not only terrible the parent is, but how abusive they are. And they turn that other person into an enemy, right? This is everyday shit, right? This is part of things. People spend a lot of time training to handle the fist and whatnot that are going to come at them. I don't know that that's still going to hold true when the fists are actually coming. But in their day-to-day lives, they don't handle struggle very well at all. They don't handle conflict. They don't handle somebody not holding the same beliefs as them very well at all. Okay? Why should they have to? Right? If your belief system doesn't require other people to believe the same things that you do, you have a whole lot less struggle. Okay? Now, if they come at you and force you to conform, then we either have to have a negotiation of one form or another. It's either going to be this way or the swords are coming out, right? So anyway, we have to be careful. So what I'm going to be covering here is at least a third, if not over half, of a structure within classical Japanese martial arts and warriorship. We often talk about the shuhari model for going from form and model to being able to just operate out in the world with what you've learned. But there's another one called Shingi Tai, right? And I'm just going to borrow this for a moment. I'm going to have to erase it, right? But you guys will have the recordings, right? Shingi Tai. This is kind of a last minute thought I had before I clicked the go live kind of thing, or I would have made a separate space. Okay, Shingi Tai are these three aspects of a complete warrior, of a complete martial artist, of a complete sensei. Okay, so what we have is Shin in this case is heart, right? Spirit, commitment, those kind of things, right? If your heart's not in it, okay, probably not going to win it. I made that up. Anyway, right? Gi is translated as technique, but I'm going to talk about that in a minute, because to a Westerner looking at these direct translations, it can look like, no, wait a minute, how's that not, right? And then Tai, the word Tai, like taijutsu, right, means body, okay? So yes, we can talk about, you know, like the body capable of doing the techniques and all that kind of stuff, right? You have techniques, right? You have skills, you have skill proficiency, right? And then you have heart, spirit, those kind of things, right? But what most people miss is that this part right here, okay, is what holds these together when the pressure is on, when the stress is on. And I don't mean like there's safety nets, okay? There's no, people throw around this term, right? Look, there's no rules in self-defense. Yeah, we get it, okay? But don't forget, there's no tap out. There's no, for you to concede is to die. Okay, you can go, oh, I'm done. Yeah, you are. Okay, it's very different, right? It's not like, oh, okay, itai, itai. Okay, itai in Japanese means pain, right? Okay, which, yeah, okay. I want you to stop because you're going to break me. Okay, my teachers in Japan, specifically one of them, sometimes multiple times in a given class, but at least a couple of times a week. Students that get a little on the whiny side, right, are reminded that every time you come to the dojo, every time you come to class, you risk dying. Now, depends on the class, the instructor, and the structure. For most people, they don't have that recognition, okay? But if the dojo is set up that way, then you're probably going to have things that operate differently than training with a huge safety net, hoping that, or deluding ourselves into believing that when the pressure's on and the person that you're dealing with is not your training partner, they're not your friend, they couldn't give a shit less about you. And once they finish you, shit, who knows? They may go, you know, knock on your door and go visit your family. Who knows, right? So, but another way to look at this is that Tai, the body, is the body capable of doing what needs to be done, right? Technique, in the way most people think of technique, right? The physical actions, that belongs down here. This is the mental stuff. This is the strategy. This is the mental resilience, right? The confidence, the ability to focus. This is the commitment to go in there and get things done. This one is when shit goes wrong, I can stay on track. I can adapt, right? So this is the techniques that are here, not just physical stuff. When people see this and this, they tie them together. But this is up here, okay? This is, what's your normal instinct? What's your normal habit pattern when you're in the dojo, just in the dojo, right? There's no consequences of messing it up other than ego being embarrassed or, shit, I didn't do it right, or, okay? But where does your mind go when a technique immediately, screws up, or when the technique is over, right? At what point does the mind disconnect? Like, oh yeah, okay, technique's over, so therefore the fight's over. We've covered that in past episodes. All kinds of things, right? A person starts to slip or the technique starts to go, right? Do we suddenly, jack on extra pressure and we get all herky-jerky in our movement and stuff because we start to panic, right? I'm going to lose it, that kind of thing, right? This is all mental stuff, okay? So these qualities within the Seishin Teki the things I started this week, they're going to form our core mental elements. Okay. In reality, everything in the book, there are 11 core study areas, development, proficiency levels that have to do with the mind and the heart. Right. These just form our core for this week. Right. And then we're going to take a look at 5 other ones that actually have more to do with the practical application side. So my goal for this session is to outline these things, but especially when we get over here, to give you some tips and ideas for coming up with training exercises or ways to work with it within the dojo, how to insert it into your training so you're not doing what most people do and just, we're going to focus on the physical and, we're just going to assume that the mind and heart are going to be where they are. Okay. So again, to repeat Takamatsu and Hatsumi Sensei's quotes, well, let me do this first, right? The overall theme, just in case you missed it, right, is we're going to be talking about the missing element in most self-defense training. And I have been styles of martial arts, different self-defense systems and whatnot. So this is speaking from experience, not speaking from I've only ever taken ninjutsu and I'm just going to, or whatever martial art, right? And I'm just going to assume that everybody else is wrong. Okay. This is not just training across the broad spectrum, but being a military and a federal cop and an undercover investigator and having to deal with really bad people in really bad situations. So I've got that experience element as well. And Hatsumi Sensei has said this in the past, and he actually had me write an article about an incident that I shared during a class. He was going around the class pointing out certain people that had real world experience and having them share some insight. And his big point to everybody was, doesn't matter what your rank level is, doesn't matter how many techniques you know. If you don't have any real world experience, you better be checking with people who do, because while they may not know the same number of techniques you do, their taijutsu may not be as good as yours, their rank may not be as high as yours, they may not be able to tell you how to do XYZ technique, but they will be able to tell you what you better be paying attention to, what you will have to deal with, and what you better be prepared for when you're inside that bubble, because there is no forgiveness. There is no forgiveness. Okay? And there is no salvation. You, in that moment, are your own salvation. Okay? Or, I don't know, you can call it luck or you can call it the will of the gods, whatever. But don't discount that either. However, that's not this class. Okay? So again, Seishin Teki Kyoyo is the whole terminology. First, this is being pulled from that first area of training within the Tobacco School. So if you go to onlineninjaacademy.com/Seishin Teki, that's where you'll find the book. If you're so interested. If not, don't worry about it. Okay. So core mental elements. Anyway, what was I going to do? I was going to repeat the Takamatsu and Soke quotes, which are really, really close together, right? Takamatsu quote: "The body follows the mind. If the mind is weak, the body will crumble." Okay. This reinforces why mental strength must be trained, right? As much as physical skills, as much as, not as an afterthought. Not as the teacher lectures in class, everybody nods, like doing the whole horse thing. Right? Get it, Sensei? Of course, duh. Right? Needs to be trained, right? And then Soke's quote: "A person strong in technique but weak in mind is fragile in real battle." And this reinforces that mental fortitude is more critical than technique alone in a self-defense situation. Right? As a matter of fact, heard a story from Sensei one time. He was actually conveying a story about Takamatsu Sensei. Takamatsu Sensei was like 13 years old. He was the senior student in Mizuta Sensei's dojo. He's learning Takagi Yoshinryu. And back in the day, it was not unheard of that somebody would come in requesting a lesson. And that is the Japanese polite way of saying, we're going to race for pink slips, and whoever wins gets the dojo, or gets to keep the dojo. Right? And so normally the way this works is that when somebody comes in and challenges the dojo, they're challenging the teacher, right? Because they really want to wipe the floor with the teacher's ass, right? There's kind of a buffer in there, right? Where the senior student gets to defend the school first, and if he loses, then the teacher does it. Sometimes it's the student behind it, so it creates kind of a, you don't go more than 3 deep and whatnot. And it's because, you know, seniors they've got a vested interest in things working well. Well, anyway, this guy comes in, and this new guy, old, you know, people can often discount the old guys, right? So old guy, in the back of the room, right, pops up into his face. You know, he's just like bowing and just pleading with Mizuta Sensei to let him have the honor of defending the school. Well, of course, this 13-year-old, you know, teenager, Takuma Sensei, right, immediately became pissy, right, because it's my thing, right? And Mizuta Sensei calmed him down and said, no, it's okay. It'll be okay. I mean, if he loses, you get your chance, right? So here's this invader that comes in, right? Obviously looking like he knows some stuff, right? And he got this smug look on his face, like, it's the guy that stands up, white uniform, white belt, whatever, right? And so as soon as Mizuta Sensei says, okay, this guy, like, very quickly moves through the rest of the students, comes up to the mat, right? And then jumps on the mat, and like just screams, right? And then stomps toward this guy, right? And this guy all of a sudden just like backs up and just concedes, right? And turned to leave, and before he could leave, Mizuta Sensei says, why'd you give up? And this guy said, because he's crazy, right? I don't want any of that, right? So he was willing to fight style for style in a fair fight for the ultimate prize, right? Taking Mizuta Sensei's dojo seriously, making the Takagi Yoshino you look like shit, but you get some white belt that comes up and just has demons and fire in his eyes, and just, I may lose, but motherfucker, right? And he folded, just folded, right? And the lesson we got that day was sometimes, a lot of time, attitude is way more important than technique. Okay? You can shut things down. And I don't mean that you walk around with a chip on your shoulder, because that often attracts other assholes with chips on their shoulders. Right? And that's what causes a lot of fights. Okay? But what really happened in that moment was this white belt was willing to have the floor dusted with his ass, but he was going to give it everything he had. How fucking dare you, right? And this other guy came in, you know, resting his laurels on his skill, and his art was better than that. Well, that shit broke really fast. Okay, so we don't overlook these things. Okay, but we also don't just assume that we're either born with it, we either have it or we don't. I hear that a lot. I've heard that over the years of the Bujinkan as well. Just did a class with my one inner circle group. It's just our weekly coaching session. And the discussion was on tips and exercises and things to do to train the ability, and then, of course, be able to pass and go beyond the Saki detection of unseen danger and detect and evade unseen danger, that 5th dan test. And one of the things that we discussed was there's this belief in certain areas, in certain realms, that you either have it or you don't. So what does that mean? You just luck out being born with it, and that's why you passed? Trust me, I've seen my fair share of 5th dan test, and a lot of people had a moment of paranoia, and they just happened to flinch or move at the right time, and they passed. Sorry, it's just the way it is. Okay? But that test is not a culmination of anything. It does show that you have a certain level of skill, but it's a bridge, it's a doorway to a whole other area of training. I know that because Hatsumi Sensei told me after I passed mine, that feeling that you had when you allowed that attack to occur, that caused that to happen, from now on, every time, even if you're in class teaching and your student is just going to be attacking so you can show a technique, every time you have that feeling first. that leads. And that feeling was, hit me, please. It's amazing what that will do. Anyway, so I'm not a big fan of the either have it or you don't bullshit. Why would you not? Even if it would give you a slight edge, why would you not train something that could give you that edge? I don't know. I can't speak for everybody. Anyway, so let's dive into this. We're going to take a look at the 3 core mental elements. I started with these. So if you were on for Kuden for the podcast or you've listened to the recordings, that's all cool. We started that on Monday. 3 core mental elements of combat survival. Combat survival, right? So we're not talking about necessarily sport fights or the 2 bulls, fighting for bragging rights on Friday night, Saturday night, trying to get the girl or, whatever, right? Okay. So again, there's that Takamatsu thing, right? But what we're really focusing on here is how mental resilience separates survivors from victims. Okay. There's a lot of people that have gotten their asses handed to them, or they're in a morgue or a grave, who had lots of skill, physical skill. Right? So let's not forget, right? There is an old samurai saying, an old samurai maxim, it's a big fancy word for saying, right? That's used a lot, right? Which is, be still as a mountain and flow like a great river. Okay? So this points to the first core element, which is fudoshin. Fudoshin means immovable mind, also heart. Okay? Please note that when you see the word shin in Japanese, okay, not shin kami, as in like divine, divinity, God, that kind of thing. Shin kokoro, right? The lower part of the nin, okay? That's not just heart, the way the Westerners would use it, okay? That's our core, okay? Mind, heart, right? So what this is remaining unbroken, unshaken in the midst of chaos, okay? Easier said than done, right? Okay. So combat example of this is in how like freezing up or flinching at an attack, right? Or when you're surprised by one, came in faster, came from an angle you didn't expect, whatever, right? How it just leads to failure, okay? Just leads to failure, right? So from a dojo drill tie-in kind of perspective, right? What we could do is use preset high stress drills, right? To train resistance to psychological pressure. I'll talk about some other ones as we go along, but an example of that would be, and I do this for people that are, that I'm considering for like second degree black belt, which to me, for somebody to get a second degree black belt for me, and the requirements are the same that 2 of my first teachers had, right? It was in our curriculum. Second degree black belt was the ability to use our Nimpo Taijutsu, to be able to string our basics together in an unbroken flow, a logical flow against just a typical attacker on the street. Not a criminal mastermind, not an assassin, not a multiple attacker situation. Somebody that anger management, chip on his shoulder, typical fighter type, right? Throwing whatever he or she wants, and we're able to use taijutsu and nothing else to survive that, to handle it, okay? And that's a cool thing, okay? So what we want to do is kind of start to change the game a little bit, right? So what I'll do for somebody that I am considering for second degree black belt is I'll, before a class or before a particular technique or whatever, I'll just kind of lean in to some other senior or whatever who I would like for them to be their training partner every once in a while. And what I'll say is, every once in a while, when you're working with them, throw the wrong technique, throw the wrong attack. No matter what technique we're working on or what the demonstration is or whatever, okay? Throw the wrong thing. You know, and as soon as you do it, and that whatever they do, right? Apologize. Shit, sorry. That was the last thing we were working on, or whatever. Okay. Or As soon as the technique is over, you go to the ground, they start to break away, whatever, do something. Like if you're on the ground, like grab their leg or punch the top of their foot or whatever, right? If it was something where they just kind of like broke free and then just kind of reshifted to kamae, right? Just give it 2-3 seconds and then throw something else just to see if they're still paying attention. That leads into another thing, another one of these mindsets. But again, this is one of those things where if there's no level of unpredictability, if everything is, look, martial artists and self-defense people are some of the highest level of control freaks that exist. If we weren't, we wouldn't be trying to control this chaotic area of life called physical attacks, murderous intent, that kind of shit, right? So, but we have to be careful because we can over control the training paradigm and then develop a false sense of confidence, okay? So anyway, just like I said with this thing where he's kind of dropping his guard or whatever, and this next thing comes in, right? I want to see if his, at least some of his attention is still on me and what I'm doing, or the other guy and what he's doing, okay? Not like, it's not an eagle eye kind of thing. Right? It's just recognizing that just because the technique's over, that doesn't mean the fight's over, okay? So that leads us into the next core element, which is zanshin. Zanshin. A lot of people combine these two together, and I know there's lots of other definitions and whatnot, but how about if we, if we look at the kanji itself, okay? So zanshin means lingering awareness. Lingering awareness. Okay. Well, how long does it linger? Until the fucking threat goes away. That's not difficult, right? That's what we're studying to handle, right? So now, this is not the lingering awareness that some people have where somebody dissed them 4.5 years ago and they're still holding a grudge, or 20 years ago, or whatever, right? That it's not that. Like, I remember, man. Okay, look, they probably long since forgot it. So all you're doing is like to prove that somebody hurt you, like they caused that wound. Right? Every once in a while, to make sure the wound doesn't go away, I'm just gonna grab some salt or sand and rub it in it, so we've got this trophy to keep showing everybody, so we can prove what kind of an asshole that person is. Personally, I think that's kind of a dick move, that I'm gonna like hold on to an injury so I can lean into that when that person has gotten on with their life, might be different, completely forgot about it, might not even think about you ever again. But to make sure everybody understands, there's a reason why my life is this way. I can't accomplish my goals. I can't, whatever. Like, see, wait, hold on. See, okay? Talk about just bullshit mind games. Okay? When do we get the third one? I'm going to have fun with that one. Anyway, zanshin, lingering awareness, right? This is staying engaged before, during, and after an encounter. Okay? Doesn't mean that that's 100% of what you're doing, but what should I be paying attention to as my partner and I come together? Because we're not training in the dojo. We're not doing it automatically. The point of training is to develop skill sets that you will do when you're not consciously thinking about doing them. If that has not occurred, if you can't not do the thing, if you need left brain conscious level reminders, oh, don't forget what Sensei said, okay? You don't have it, and you certainly will not have it under pressure, okay? So first thing I think is to understand what the hell training is supposed to be all about, right? Anyway, so, but what should I be looking for? Right? Nothing, but I am looking, because the way they move, the way they position themselves or whatever, right, tells me certain things if I'm paying attention, okay? How he positions, right? If I'm facing off with somebody, right, my attack, generally speaking, is going to be different from here than it is from here, than it is from here, than it is from here, right? So it's, these mean something, right? Same thing, right? Where are the shoulders? Where are the shoulders? Where are the, okay? But that requires more study than just coming into a dojo and learning step-by-step moves. Assuming that because I learned X, Y, Z, I can apply that to everything. That's why so many people are conned out of their damn money by these people that sell them learn these 3 techniques and you can defend against any attacker ever that's ever existed or that could ever come at you, right? And you'll be able to do that and master it within 30 minutes. They deserve to get ripped off. Okay? You can't con an honest person. Anybody that gets conned, anybody gets duped out of their money, right? That literally the person didn't just like swoop in and just like maul their world, right? Anybody that gets conned that way are duplicit in the con. They wanted a lot for very little, and that's why the con works. Because rational, intelligent, non-greedy, non-lazy, right? Honest people, you can't con an honest person. That's actually a saying within the con man's world, right? So they have little tests that they do to vet somebody to get their interest before the con. When you understand that, you'll understand more of the ninja's psychological warfare stuff. Okay. So anyway, so a combat example of this, one is to overcommit to an attack or to a technique. And so, like I throw something or I do something, like students will, here's an example, right? Let's say I have students at Mod 3 working on Osoto Nage, Osoto Gake, right? This great outer reap or great outer throw kind of thing, right? And so we have them kind of shift in place where there's a push on the shoulder, there's a pull on the opposite arm, right? And then we step through and dump them, okay? So just really brief, it's remember, push, pull, step, turn, okay? So students will push, pull, and then when they can't understand why their balance is being broken, right? What's the purpose of the push pull? What's to start initiating the kuzushi, the balance breaking, okay? Well, I pushed and pulled, but like I can't throw him. Well, his balance isn't broken, okay? You have no business taking that step. The purpose of the step is to reposition, to create a leverage point, but also to continue the balance breaking. So when you do the turn, even if he resists, he helps dump himself, okay? But as long as I did the push-pull, there's an assumption that everything should work, right? Well, that's overcommitment to just one part of a technique, okay? But we could be overcommitted to a particular thing, right? And so we take our partner to the ground and we get him into a little lock and stuff because we're all like, look what I can do kind of thing. And then we never see the second attacker come up and shove something in our kidney or punch us in the face or whatever, because we're so focused on making him grimace with pain or, to get everybody else going, oh man, good technique, whatever, okay? It doesn't work, right? I need to be, what should I be paying attention to? I get the lock on this person or this restraint so I know exactly where he is and I don't have to worry about him, right? Because he can't get at me. And then from here, I know from a teacher's perspective, we tend to stop there for most students because until they get that, nothing else matters. Because if I had them look around or move and their knee shifts off that fulcrum point, well, then they lost everything. So once they can get that consistently, then I want them to move and practice like replacing one knee with the other or sliding the elbow joint up the thigh or whatever. So I can scan and maintain the lock on him. Skill proficiency should be constantly progressing, not, oh, I got that one. Okay? So we want to be careful that we're not missing things. Okay? A second example of this would be just dropping your guard too soon. Okay? I got my partner to the ground, right? Or, and again, for beginners, right? I'm doing the throw. He's practicing the roll because he's practicing to not get broken by a throw. So cool, right? But there's a certain point in training where, like, if I fall into this habit of I've thrown, he's, rolling away, and everything breaks, right? And I start talking to him about something else, or I start thinking about, okay, it's my turn to attack or whatever, right? Then I'm not going to be paying attention, or I'm going to be uber surprised because of how quickly he can close that distance. He rolls out of the throw, zips around and rolls back and pops up in front of me, or gets up and charges back in. See, this is how I test people for second dot. They have no business thinking their techniques are ready for the street when their mind isn't street ready, regardless of what their techniques are. Because if their techniques can be perfectly fine. But if these skills aren't right, they're going to fail as soon as things shift in a direction that they didn't anticipate. As soon as they lose control, they're exposed. Okay? So anyway, Miyamoto Musashi, there's a quote by him, to know your enemy, you must become your enemy. I know in Sun Tzu's, it's, to know your enemy and yourself makes you unbeatable. But there's another way to look at this. Okay. What made me a really, really, really good cop when I was starting as a military cop. Okay. I had a mentor tell me, yes, you need to know the laws. Okay. You need to know those things. Right. But if that's all you do, then you're never going to be anything other than a patrolman. You're never going to be anything other than an enforcer. Okay. To catch the really bad ones, the really smart ones, you need to be able to think like one. That doesn't mean you become one. You need to be able to think like one. If I were over there, how would I do this? Then start looking in that direction. Okay. So if somebody threw you and you recovered, or they dropped you on the ground and were suddenly just, what would you not turn in, keep the fight going, or would you just freaking surrender? Okay, I got to tell you, if you would just surrender, well, that's not most bad guys. His original intent is to kick your ass or to kill you. You dumping him on the ground, it's just going to fuel the fire. Okay, so what this quote means is, look, if you would do it, why would you think that he wouldn't? Okay, so we would counter an attack, and we would do something unexpected, right? After he thinks he's won, right? So why would we think that he wouldn't do the same thing, right? We are not, but I and my students and my teachers and hopefully most of my peers are not training to defend against blubbering fucking idiots or total morons, right? Regardless of what ego thinks, this training is for somebody. Ishuk Sensei says this all the time when somebody throws like just an ass white fucking technique or an attack in class. There's no juice behind it. There's no intent, whatever. It might be physically correct. He'll say one of two things. Your job is to make my life, your job as the uke is to make my life interesting. And what that means is, if I don't have an imperative need to get into the right position to shut this down, or to at least, like, you should be taking me by surprise, right? So that's your job, right? Anything less than that is shit. And that's what he says, right? But it's always followed with, I don't need 2,000-year-old secrets to defend against shit, right? Our basics defend against shit, okay? If you go beyond basics, you're defending against somebody who cold, no projection of intent. I mean, as bad as it gets, right? So as a dojo drill tie-in here, just as an example, right? What we could do is a multi-opponent and post-engagement kind of situational awareness exercise. What that means, we set things up. One of the things we'll be doing for the Friday masterclass, this virtual training that we do. Now, I won't be doing it. Sensei Whistler will be leading things into it again because I have to be out of town. But one of the drills that will be happening is it's almost going to be like a free-for-all, right? Where everybody's going to be milling around, and if they get close enough to somebody, right, they're going to attack. It doesn't matter if as we were getting closer, I decided like I was going to be the attacker. Like, if he gets a shot off first, I'm going to have to move, and then from there, right? If other students are already done with their technique and they're looking for another target, and I'm close enough, one of them might pop off a shot in that direction. So I need to be paying attention to not just like I'm here and he's here. If I move to Ichimonji over here and I'm still paying attention to him, what are these guys doing? And that goes for both of us. He could have thrown an attack, I defended, but now he's glancing around waiting for something else. and everybody's going to be in motion. They're not going to pair up and bow and then do their thing. It's going to be like walking around at a fair or something like that. Okay, cool shit. All right, so third one, very quickly here, right? Third one, Kyojitsu Tenkan Ho. Talk about this a lot, right? Kyojitsu Tenkan Ho, not that kind of ho. Ho in this, it means method, or it can even mean science, way, that kind of thing, right? Kyojitsu Tenkan points to truth and falsehood and the interplay between them. Okay, so here's this thing. Everybody wants to learn Kyojitsu Tenkan because they see it as trickery, right? I'm going to present a falsehood that he takes as a truth, and then that way when he falls for it, I can get him with what I really want to get him with. That's all great. That's all great. But there's a secret buried within this. You know, falsehoods, lies, deceptions, that kind of thing. Truth and falsehood. The secret within this, which I've been teaching my higher level students on a regular basis, is to do this properly, you first have to understand and be able to clearly see what's actually true, what's actually real and going on, and not a mental projection or a guess, and what's really false and what's really a lie. This has nothing to do with what your belief system is. Okay? It has to do with, well, it'd be nice if your belief system was in line with actual truth and not, well, was just, this is what I believe. Nobody gives a shit, except other people that you've aligned yourself with, so you can feel like you're a part of a mutual admiration society. Okay? If you can't discern between truth and falsehood, then everything that you do in this realm to try to manipulate or deceive is going to be guesswork. Okay? And here's the deep level stuff that I've been giving my advanced students. Okay? We have to get past being deceived and manipulated. And the first person, the first attacker that we have to worry about is this. Head and heart, right? Me. Right? We have been falling for our own bullshit for a long time. So if we don't get clear on this, we're not going to be able to use it as a tactical tool. Okay? So just at a base level, we'll just get back to that. All right? So the Kyojitsu Tenkan Ho can also be translated to strategy, that kind of thing, right? So truth and falsehood strategy, right? This is manipulating perception for survival. Okay? So a combat example is understanding how deception, right? Whether it's fake compliance, a broken posture, looking like you're kind of worn out, or looking like you might hurt yourself already or whatever, right? It creates openings, okay? Because it could make him drop his guard, but at the very least, like, even if you don't do these obvious things that people think of as trickery, the choice of kamae opens and closes certain avenues of attack and certain target areas, and it already begins to manipulate his perception about what's open, how he can get it, what he has to do it, those kind of things, right? So again, but that requires people to get and understand the truth of kamae and get past the lie or the falsehood, right? That it's just another type of stance. Okay, so we have to be careful, right? So kind of a dojo drill tie-in. I just talked about, you know, using kamae and all that, but we could use training setups that force students to recognize and use misdirection. Okay, so I could set up in a seigan or kukishinen kate hichi no kamae, that kind of thing, seigan, right? And so no matter what he does to try to get in, I just stay on him, so he can't get through it unless he moves this out of the way or does something to it, goes after that lead leg, right? Or I decide when he gets to attack. So I keep that aligned, and then I manufacture a mistake, right? And we can do this at a very basic level for beginners you can just, instead of your partner saying, are you ready? And you saying yes, and then they attack, right? You can just agree that when this drops, that also teaches your uke to not fucking attack if there's not a clear and present opening, right? So anyway, the tactical takeaway is that these three of the Seishin Teki Kyoyo elements determine who controls the fight. Okay? These three are about who controls the fight. Because this stuff works. That's the good news. The bad news is it works for whoever is better at these than the other one. Okay? Whoever can stay more calm under pressure, whoever pays attention to even the most subtle things, and he who does the deception stuff and sets the other one up better. Okay, so cool news is this stuff works really well. And there's lots of people out there in the martial arts and self-defense world who are really, really good at this stuff, but they're not doing ninjutsu. They're not doing the same thing we are, right? And sometimes they're not even in those worlds, but they're just good fighters. They're just intuitively good at this stuff. So it's not about who has what style or whatever. These are important core elements, right? And it's like the idea behind ninjutsu, where our job isn't to win, right? It's to control the narrative. It's to control his perceptions. It's to control, right? So whoever's doing that, and what it comes down to when it comes to controlling narrative is you either control the narrative or he'll control your narrative for you, whoever he or she may be, powers that be, whatever. You either control the narrative or the narrative will be controlled for you. Yeah? See, we're all looking for to not be controlled. But what we don't understand is that the way many of us are going about, I know, I came to this art the same way. Had this shit beaten out of me by teachers, physically, mentally, emotionally. Okay? We have to stop being complicit to our own fucking con job. We have to stop complaining about being manipulated or the powers that be or are using and abusing and corrupt and all that. And okay, look how bad the world is. Well, okay, stop buying the shit that's made in sweatshops. Well, I don't have a choice. Yeah, you do. Make your own shit. Well, who has the time for that? Nah, see, that's not about who has the time for that. See, it's just easier to bitch and complain that that's going on while being a part of the same system. That, okay, this is about being a warrior. This is about being a ninja, right? If you don't understand what the problem is and you're not being clear and you're creating your own falsehoods but calling them this, then you're bullshitting yourself. Okay? All right. He who controls these things controls the fight. Okay? All right. Very quickly here, let's expand into practical applications. All right? So I've got 5 mindset qualities for survival. Right? So these were elements. These are core elements. These are skill sets. These are skills. Right? Okay? These are qualities. Okay? These can be trained and learned and things like that. These have to be developed. Okay? And there's degrees too. Okay? All right. So what we're talking about here is how these attributes link directly to the Seishin Teki Kyoyo principles and are essential in live combat, not sparring. I know how rough and tumble sparring can be, competitions, those kind of things, right? But if we could just step back and realize the safety nets and layers that make that not what we're supposed to be learning, it's not the same, okay? So first one, right? You may or may not have heard of some of these things, okay? So first one is heijoshi. Heijoshi, okay? Heijoshin means like common or calm or constant mind, right? We'll use calm or constant mind. Well, Sensei, I see the calm part, right? Because people want to pick and choose. Well, you said calm mind. How's that different from Furoshin, right? That's immovable mind. That's calm. Yeah. Okay. I'm picking from words based on translations, right? But that's also why I use the word common, everyday, whatever. I have to develop the ability with my mind that when shit's happening, it's no different in my mind than anything else that happens during a day. How bad does somebody have to maneuver on the road for you to not just recognize they're doing it, call them a bunch of freaking names, pick your foot up off the accelerator, put it on the brake? You don't even think about that. You just need to slow down a little bit so you don't run into jackass, whatever, right? Okay. How aggressive does somebody have to be before your leg jerks over to the brake because it was a sudden surprise? But you still fucking drive back and forth to work every day. You haven't put the car aside. You haven't decided you're not driving or whatever. So even that has been normalized. This is Hazel Machine. Okay. Remaining calm while under stress. Okay. Equals better decision making. DM, decision making. Okay. So this is just staying constant. No matter how things change or whatever. Cool. Yeah, I saw that. Excellent. Okay. This is about making better decisions, because if stress occurs and we don't like stress, or change occurs and we don't like stress, like, I don't like change. Okay. Well, then you're going to make shitty decisions when things change. Okay. I need to stay on track. Right. So here's a reality check. We talk about the adrenal rush all the time, right? The fight, flight, or freeze mechanism. Okay. The adrenaline rush to the system, when the hypothalamus drops adrenaline, epinephrine, norepinephrine, those kind of chemicals for the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism, when they get dropped into the body, into the bloodstream, and the bloodstream carries these things to the cells change states. What that means is they operate differently. All of them, right? Okay. The kidney and other organ functions, right? Including the brain, including the eyes. Muscles go from fine motor skills to gross motor skills, that kind of thing. Let's go back to the eyes, just as one example, right? The adrenaline rush creates tunnel vision. Okay. So here's the question. How do you counter that? You counter that by controlling the adrenal response. That happens through experience. The more experience you get, that's why the combat operators and special operators in military situations and whatnot, under extreme fire, their bodies are doing certain things and they're covering, and there's little oh shit moments and things like that. It's almost like, and I can speak to this because I was only in Grenada for 39 days, but it gave me a whole different understanding and appreciation for guys that spent a year or more in NAM and hot spots like that. Okay. It almost feels like you're in a multiple personality situation where part of your brain is saying, or screaming for mommy or whatever, right? And another part is like paying attention and looking for fields of fire and making decisions, or, you know, doing little hand gestures to signal for somebody to go in a different direction, right? It's a very, very different state, okay? Right? Left brain has, these other things have to be doing things, but it frees up a little bit more of that left brain, a little bit more of that consciousness to be able to do things. Okay. So this is where people think that Bujinkan training is bullshit because of the slow training, right? But slow motion sparring, like adaptive stuff, where you could be working techniques, but I'm talking about where change occurs, right? Slow motion sparring with the allowance for unpredictable attack changes, right? What this does is it forces the student's brain to become more adaptable, to not jump to conclusions. Because the human brain, for the average person, jumps ahead. We hear a couple of words that we've heard before, and we jump to conclusions, and some of us will, you know, finish the person's sentence, or will, you know, make an assumption and go do that thing, and then they'll go, that's not what I meant. What's what you said? No, that's not what I said. right? And the reality is it wasn't what I said because you only listened to the first couple of words and then you jumped ahead because, right, let's get this shit done, right? So we got to be careful, right? So what that might look like is, you know, we start off this kind of thing where the elbow comes up, right? And so it looks like that's going to happen, except that this kick suddenly comes up, or this is coming around this way, and then it changes into something else, right? Because the student, the receiving student, the tori, needs to develop the ability to not make judgment decisions too far down the line, right? There is a bubble, right? And things can still change in there. How do we know that? Because our strikes don't determine direction until they hit this bubble, okay? It's like doing a yoko menuch with a long staff, right? So we're coming up. A lot of people, when we first teach people, right, we just come around this way, right, to strike, except that he can fucking see it, right? Okay, so he has to be slow or have slow reaction time, or you need to do something else tricky or whatever. But that staff is huge. Okay? In our upcoming spring camp, we're going to be doing it with spear. We're talking 9 to 13 foot staves, and you have to be able to sneak something into position and catch him off guard. Well, how the hell do you do that with something that long? But it's those principles and concepts. It's not about the spear. Some people train with the spear because it's, you know, it's got a certain cool factor, whatever, right? But it's what you're learning from those long weapons that you integrate into the small weapons and integrate into your taijutsu that makes shit just, it's a huge game changer, okay? And so instead of doing this, the upper, intermediate, and advanced student learns to make all strikes come from this bow footy, right? So as this thing is coming up the center line, what's he going to do? Get off the center line. Yeah. So there's a certain point where I change the direction, or I'm launching a fist to like slightly off center. So his system finds it easy to move. And then just as the fist gets past that point, it turns into something else, and now it's not here, it's over here. And it pops into uko, or the side of the head. Okay? That gives you a huge edge. But if we're just making that assumption that as soon as he starts moving, the elbow's down, it's coming this way, and we automatically go to our angle, or we automatically do our next move, and we're not really watching the flight path, right? Yeah, I know, but that's slow, man. How you gonna do it when you're fast? Well, see, here's the thing. Slow training allows you to control the training paradigm, and it causes synaptic pathways to grow and muscle responses and things like that, right? The cool thing about speed, and what makes it, most people think of it here, is that they believe that to be able to be fast in a fight, you have to train fast, but you don't. Because under the adrenal response, you will be as fast as you can be, and you'll be as strong as you can be. So you don't have to train to be strong or fast. You train reaction time, and you train to eliminate those things that slow reaction time or catch you by surprise. You make the muscle stronger through certain exercises or joint flexibility or whatever, so that your strength quotient, when you're under the adrenal response, is higher than what it would have been if you didn't do those things. But you don't have to train fast and train strong to be fast and strong. You understand what creates strength and you understand what creates speed. You can practice those things at slow motion so that you're getting the form right and the muscle memory gets programmed correctly, because it doesn't matter if you're doing it slow or fast, the muscles are going to fire to do that thing correctly, unless, right, we didn't control it properly. Okay. All right. So what we're looking to do is do drills that force adaptability. Not talk about it, not assume we have it, not We're going to force the brain and body to have to adapt to the reality of instantly changing conditions. So it just becomes a normal part of our day. Yeah, of course. The only unchanging constant in the universe is the law of change. Everything changes. Some fast, some slow, whatever. Okay. As soon as we understand that and we really get it, that's how we live and process the world, less things will take us by surprise. I can't believe he did that. Well, then you weren't fucking paying attention. Right? So, number 2 is Makoto. Makoto. This might sound familiar to those of you who have the samurai's virtues, right? The virtues of Bushido. Some of these, the names overlap, but the way a ninja approaches it differently, right? But what the hell does sincerity and truthfulness in action have to fucking do with a fight, right? Sincerity and truthfulness in action. What the hell, right? Okay. Well, I meant to punch him in the face, so I did. See, now he knows. Okay. Well, I'm not going to say that's not it. However, from a strategic standpoint, Makoto is about no hesitation. When it's time to act, we commit fully. There's no second guessing. There's no self-doubt, right? There's no, is this the moment or not? Okay, because while you're thinking that, you're getting punched in the face or stabbed in the throat or whatever. Okay, so the reality check here is most people hesitate out of doubt, out of fear, out of overthinking. What if I get in trouble? Okay, I don't want to go to jail. You should have resolved that shit a long time ago before you ever stepped up. Okay, so the dojo drill here is they're wrapped around sudden decision drills, right? I have to, right? There's an immediate counter strike versus an evasion, whatever, under attack pressure, right? So do I have the opening where I can counter, or should I keep my ass in evasion kind of thing, right? So, and I have to be able to do that mid movement. So for a lot of people, they can't stop paying attention to the arm that's coming in and the cool uke nagashi or whatever that they're doing, where at a certain point that should become like 99% subconscious, so that I can be paying attention to the information I'm getting from it, and I can recognize when something is not open, coming open. I want to meet a target that is opening, not wait until it's opening before I go after it, because the time lag allows him to respond. I'm late. Early is I go for it, but I'm not paying attention that there's something in the way or something that will be in the way. Late is I wait until it's open before I go, and then he flinches or covers or whatever, right? I want to be paying attention to when, right? When will it be coming open, okay? And for those who can't get their head wrapped around this, if you drive a car, right, you do this all the time when you press the brake, unless you lurch all the time, right? You can see the line, you can see the stop sign, you can see the red light. You know where you need to be, the car needs to be at the stop point. So you just slowly edge on, and you just bring it down, right? So we already have these faculties we use all the time. The trick is bringing them into alignment with martial arts stuff, okay? Next one, which also is off of the sum. It's off of sum. If you get the book and you study into the virtues better, instead of just getting a poster and going, oh, look, there's the 7. No, the 7 weren't always the same in all places. Sometimes it was 7, 8, 13, 4, depending, right? So anyway, this next one is called chugi. Chugi. Okay? Chugi. Chugi means loyalty and duty. What? That's even worse than friggin' sincerity and you know, the action kind of stuff, right? So loyalty and duty. And again, there's a difference between having a list that ego can quote from, sounding it like it knows, and being able to pierce through what something looks like and how we can use it, or what it looks like in a different condition. Loyalty and duty equals commitment to strategy. Okay. Well, how's this different than the commitment to, like, no hesitation? See, this is when change occurs, just because he changed something, right? My goal, I always pull for my law enforcement stuff, okay? If I'm apprehending somebody, it doesn't matter how he resists. It doesn't matter how he attacks, counters, tries to get away. There's a mission, right? There is a strategy, and that strategy is to get him face down on the ground or across the hood or trunk of a car, getting his arms behind him and getting him in cuffs. That's the strategy. No matter what happens, everything has to end with that. It's not the same as no hesitation. It's not the same. Okay? So as a mental discipline, this is sticking to your tactical approach versus reacting emotionally. Or here's another one where people will surrender. They spent all this time learning a certain martial art or system, and I've seen people when they get involved in sparring matches, right? It'd be like a taijutsu or bujinkan, ninjutsu, whatever person that knows their stuff, but they get up against somebody who's doing this, or a boxer who's like, doing a little bouncy thing and whatever. And next thing you know, this person starts back. Ooh, really? Well, I got to match his stuff. Yeah, you got to match his stuff like yin yang matching, not I'm going to fight like him, because he's been doing that longer than you have, and you've been doing this longer than he has. Your job is to make him fight your way, not you fight his way. All right? So the reality check here is many lose fights because they abandon their plan mid-fight. He changes, he does something different, and then, maybe I should try this. So as a dojo drill, we do a task-based combat training, and the whole idea is to stick to a pre-selected strategy, even under increasing pressure. I tend to start people who are working on Nidan, where we start with a kata. And so the kata has this ending. But what we do is we integrate one of these little surprise kind of things, and it knocks you off course, and you still have to deal with that thing, but it knocks you off course to where now you're not on for finishing the same way. So what we do is we let a couple of other attacks come in until we can get back on track and finish the kata the same way. So this throws the people off that can't do the kata to begin with, so they keep falling off on henka. But if there is a specific endpoint, like somebody breaks into my fucking house, the endpoint is out the nearest portal. I don't care if it's a door, window, whatever. Okay? If I do anything that moves them in a different direction, deeper into my house, closer to my family or whatever, I'm fucking up. Okay? I forgot about the strategy, which is to get this asshole out of my house. If the goal is to get him on his face in an ogyaku or some restraint where the threat's over and we're going to wait for the cops now, then that's the end position. But I've decided ahead of time, out the door, or we're both going to be waiting for the cops. Okay? But for most people, they stop at, well, as long as he concedes and taps out and surrenders, then I win. It's not about winning. Right? It's not about winning. Okay? So again, maintaining strategy even under increasing pressure. Okay? Not surrendering the hard-earned techniques and strategies we've learned, not, okay? I expect Shodans and below in my curriculum to do that. Oh, and by the way, Nidan in my curriculum, for those who don't know, within the greater Bujinkan system, the way Hatsumi Sensei was promoting people, what I got from him was what I classify as Nidan, he classified as 8th or 9th Dan. In that realm, okay? So, anyway. So Makoto, Chugi. Next one is Shugyo. Shugyo, sometimes translated as quest, right? But in this context, Shugyo is warrior discipline and adaptation. Okay? Discipline and adaptation. Okay? So what we're looking at here is this looks like it's a contradiction to the previous one. Okay? The reality check here is that the opponent will change strategies. So the question is, are you trained to adapt or only react? Okay? Because what I've been working on with my advanced students for the past couple of weeks is understanding Koppo Jutsu strategy, Koshi Jutsu strategy, Daken Taijutsu strategy. If we're looking at Jutai Jutsu, we're talking about an open, free-form Shinden Fudo-ryu Jutai Jutsu strategy, or a more structured Takagi Yoshin strategy, where one, I don't give a shit how he lands, and I might even do things as a hit and run, get the hell away from him, Shinden Fudo-ryu, as opposed to Takagi Yoshin, where we're between parked cars or we're in a certain environment, or I'm back in my cop days and stuff, and I need him face down in a very specific position, in a very specific relative position to things that he might be able to use for his own defense or whatever, right? Okay, so what one of these things is about is, right, it's the end result. Okay, the other one is can I adapt strategies to still attain the same result? Okay, so the dojo drill idea kind of here, and it's not, these are not limited, these are not the only things to do, okay, but if we do rolling environmental drills, okay, like it's easy for people to roll when they don't have anything to worry about rolling into, right? But I'll change the friggin' environment. Or as somebody enters a roll, I'll have like a senior walk in front of them that shortens that distance, and they have to be able to change direction, like they're rolling, and they have to be able to change direction while they're rolling. Okay, or as they're about to be coming out of the roll and realize that's a bad place to be because he's already ready to kick me in the face, right? Can they alter their body position, drop into another roll in a different direction, that kind of thing, right? So the whole idea here is that students must apply skills in confined, uneven, or unorthodox spaces. Can you roll under a table without breaking your legs against it because you take up too much space, right? Can you, that kind of thing, right? Can you roll up a hill? Rolling down a hill is easy. You don't need anything other than like gravity, okay? But can you roll up a hill? Okay? I know, it freaks out my students as well. Anyway, all right, and number 5 is Tenshin. Tenshin. Okay? Tenshin. Universal awareness. Expanding beyond the fight. Covered this a couple of weeks ago, right? So the idea here is seeing threats before they strike. Like I'm not only training for physical self-defense, where if he's not right in front of me, coming at me with something, right? Anything before that or whatever, well, that's not self-defense. I mean, that's just like paying attention. That kind of paying attention is fucking paying attention, or is part of self-defense. Okay, so I want to see threats before they strike, right? This is part of like developing a baseline when you go into different environments, what's normal, so that my brain's already evolutionarily wired to notice differences. So if I go in and establish a baseline, what's normal? In a family restaurant, kind of loud chatter, drops a little bit, whatever, people are dressed in different clothing types, but it's still within a certain range, right? Somebody walks in a freaking tuxedo, everybody looks. Why? Because that's not the normal thing for Bob's Big Boy or whatever, for whatever that thing is, right? But if we're going into a classy restaurant, somebody walks in freaking shorts and flip-flops or whatever, right? And I know what the belief system is for a lot of people. Like, it shouldn't matter, man. Stop staring. Because, like, yeah, well, dude, you're like a fucking sore thumb, right? Nobody can't not notice, okay? And then there's a certain noise level. There's a certain ambiance. There's a certain what's normal here. And that's different than at a rave, right? There's certain, okay? There's a baseline, right? So what I'm looking for, what bodyguards are trained to look for is what's AB normal, okay? So the reality check here is, remember that tunnel vision we talked about earlier, right? We end up with tunnel vision based on our belief system or not learning how to establish baselines and things like that. We get blindsided by secondary attackers. We trip over obstacles we didn't freaking see or take into account. We get caught off guard by weapons that we didn't, like here's this jackass in front of me with a hoodie and whatever temperature it is, there's a big old freaking ball just making the pocket fall out. Could be a wallet, could be something unobtrusive. He gets out something shoved in there, but it could also be a freaking knife or a gun. So if I'm just picking my strategies based on my favorites, and I move into a position where now it becomes easy for him to just draw that thing and tag me with it, well, then guess what? That's on me. Okay? Bad guys will be bad guys, and bad guys will do tricky shit. So if we get caught by it, it should be because he is way better than us, and there was nothing we were going to be able to do about it. If we get caught by it for any other reason, that's on us. Now, it's also on us if he's better than us, just because we didn't fucking train properly. Okay. All right. Dojo drill. We can be focusing on. We can do drills that allow us to train and pay attention to, like, peripheral vision, environmental response training. In that case, like, students must track multiple opponents while engaging with one. Okay. This is what leads. It's part of multiple attacker training. Right. Okay. I'm dealing with one. My eyes are pointing at him, and I can see him, but my sight consciousness is paying attention to Jackass 1 and Jackass 2, okay? And keeping them, anything behind that angle. See, it's not out to the side. Most people think that's, anything behind this is behind me. Nope, anything behind 30 degrees off center is behind me, okay? So, again, way different stuff, okay? And this has to become natural, okay? What I mean by that is, if we still have to think about doing it, that's taking brain power away from something else. These need to be trained to a point where we don't have to think of, it's just like stepping back in Ichimonji. Somebody surprises you, right? Well, that's at least in the direction, but if they surprise you, it can be rough around the edges, but your body should be going into this thing that you've trained, okay? It's the same thing. I can't not do it. Okay? So the tactical takeaway for these is, without these 5 qualities, even the best techniques are useless. These determine who controls the fight. These determine how much of the fight you're processing. Okay? Without these, even the best techniques alone, no matter how good they are, fucked. Okay? So, put it all together here really quickly, right? So, for anybody that gets signed up for the Friday virtual training, again, you remember from Sensei Whistler, I'm giving him a little bit of carte blanche. He might switch out 1 or 2 little exercises. I'm not going to speak to the exercise itself or how it's going to be set up. I'm going to let him set that up. But the focus is on the mental training in action, right? So training under controlled stress and uncertainty. Okay, so anybody gets signed up for that, right? There's certain things you're going to be working on, right? So this class kind of got you set up. So now you've now seen how mental training is the foundation of real combat survival. Yes, the techniques are important. However, right, the controller that's driving the vehicle, just like your car does nothing. It has potential, but if you go unconscious and behind the driver's wheel, right? Okay, it's your ability to control that vehicle, not just when the conditions are well, but when shit happens, it's unpredictable, that keeps you out of accidents, that keeps you out of the morgue, that kind of stuff, right? Okay, so during the Friday class, the focus is on controlled chaos training. Okay, so students are going to be placed in survival scenarios, technique variations, or controlled randori kind of things that test and develop these core skills: Fudoshin, Zanshin. I'm sorry, 2 of these: Fudoshin, Zanshin, and Heijoshin. Okay, so going to be challenged to change tactics mid-fight, break tunnel vision, or learn how to control it better so you can minimize it, and maintain mental clarity under pressure. Okay, of course, everybody that's not dojo students will have an easier job because you'll be watching through Zoom. But if you have a training group, you run a training group, you have partners or training or students fellow students to get together and whatnot, then just duplicate the exercises. That's the point. Okay. So just wrap this up, right? Let me just finish up by saying, if your mind isn't trained, your body doesn't stand a chance. Unless your big ace in the hole is luck. Okay. Or you're being attacked by somebody who's not really a fucking threat, and you don't need to be this guy or this girl. Because I promise you, if somebody attacks you, that they have zero life value, they don't give a shit, they are absolutely going to trash the shit out of you. Without these, techniques aren't going to be enough. Because he's okay with getting hit. He's okay with getting broken. He understands, and he's okay with dying. You can't intimidate somebody who doesn't give a shit. Most gangbangers know that they'll be dead before they hit 25. So pulling half the shit that people think are going to work on that person because it would work on the average person, blowing smoke up their own ass. Okay? So why mental conditioning must be trained as aggressively as physical techniques? Because there's people in the world that, if we're not employing the psychological warfare tactics on them, and we're not controlling certain aspects of ourselves, we're going to fucking die. Right? This goes back to Tatsumi Sensei's quote that's actually on the Friday virtual page. No, did I put his on there? I don't know if I put his on there, if it's in one of the emails that you get after you sign up for it. But it's, if you can't do what you can't do when you absolutely must, you die. Okay? So here's your task for the week, regardless of whether you come to my class, regardless of whether you train with me or whatever. I'm going to encourage you to apply at least one mindset element from today's session into your daily life. You don't have to wait for a fight. You don't have to wait for a training day. All these things can be applied every single friggin' day. Okay? So, and I'm going to give you a deadline. Today's Wednesday afternoon at 4:30 Eastern time, right? So whatever that converts to for you, okay? You have until Friday's class time, which is 6 p.m. Eastern. Right? Do you have to do it? Hey, you can do whatever the fuck you want. Okay? But that's my challenge. Okay? Because the sooner you start working on it, the sooner you start developing it. Okay? If you come in, or whether you're local or whatever, and you're doing Friday's masterclass, that's where you're going to learn. You'll experience this in action, or you'll see it in action, demonstrated in action, right? And so, like, you know, as always, I hope that I or Joshi Whistler will see you there. If not, right, we design our lives through the power of our choices. So choose, okay? That's it. I'm going to wrap this up. I will talk to everybody again next time. Be safe, train hard, or don't train at all.